Hello and welcome to Books Up Close, the podcast. I'm Chris Lloyd. This is the close reading show for writers, readers and language nerds. In today's episode, I talked to Jane Yeh about her poem This Morning. Jane was born in America and has lived in London since 2002. She is the author of 3 poetry collections, Discipline from 2019, The Ninjas from 2012 and Marabou from 2005, all published by Carcanet Press. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Jane. It's really nice to see you.
It's nice to see you as well. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Of course. You know I'm a fan of your work, and I want to talk about this poem. I love this poem. But before we get into it, I want to know your thoughts on close reading as an activity, how you feel about it, but also how you feel about close reading your work.
Well, I mean, I guess, at secondary school, we were taught to do close reading in English classes. It was kind of the main thing they taught us even. So, you kind of learn how to do it, to write essays and get good grades if you can do. I mean, I enjoy it because I actually think that looking at a text closely and kind of thinking about how it works and what the author is doing is actually fun and interesting. And I think it also helps you understand the text more deeply because you're taking time to analyze it. It's a kind of slow reading, sometimes people call it, rather than just when you're consuming something like a page turner, which I also enjoy doing, but it's a different thing. But then on the other hand, there's a different school of thought, which I also can sort of partake in, which is especially with poems rather than books or a passage from Shakespeare or whatever. There's a kind of feeling sometimes that, a poem should be enjoyed more the way you enjoy a song or a piece of music or looking at a painting. The idea that you can kind of just take it in and absorb it, and that this whole apparatus of close reading or analysis kind of misses the point a little bit, or kind of, and of course, that it might shut people out from kind of enjoying something. And also slightly different, but I would also agree with, is the idea that kind of trying to analyze a poem all the time or pin down the meaning of it is kind of inadequate to understanding or feeling the kind of magic of it or the art of it. In the way that sometimes an image can't be explained logically or rationally, but it just works. And so, there's kind of the idea that trying to do a close reading is, missing the point. But I mean, I guess for me, I sort of see both sides, or I can feel both sides. And as a writer, I feel I'm coming up with these images and lines, with a certain amount of intention, for how I think that people will read them. But then at the same time, I feel I do come up with stuff that can't be explained logically or, solved like a riddle or whatever. And I am kind of just going on, what people call vibes, or, intuition or whatever. So
does that make reading your own work, does that feel strange? Or
I guess it feels a little strange, but only in the sense of that it's it makes you feel self-conscious. Do you know what I mean? Listening to your voice on recording or whatever. I don't think that it's wrong if people are trying to close read my poems or whatever. I think if they find that interesting, that's really great. And I'm glad that they want to engage. But again, at the same time, I feel it doesn't mean that you have to, or that that's the right way to read a poem necessarily. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've chosen to talk about a poem called This Morning. I don't know whether, I don't want to say too much ahead of time, but whether it sits as slightly different from some of your other work, or that it speaks in a slightly different register from some of the other poems in that collection. I don't know whether you wanted to say anything about the poem before you read it. Is there anything you want people to know or not know? Or do you want to just jump straight in?
I guess, I mean, there's not that much to know about it really, but I would say, I guess it's not as depressing as a lot of my poems are, or you know what I mean? It's kind of quite straight up cheerful, I would say, even, which is kind of refreshing, or for me it is at least. And then I guess just in terms of the words in the poem, because I'll just say I used this word edema in the second line, which is a medical term that I learned from years of watching these medical dramas like ER or Grey's Anatomy. And it just means an abnormal swelling of tissues or organs caused by fluid accumulation. And then near the end of the poem, I use this French phrase, bonne journée, which means have a nice day in French. And, if you're in France and you are leaving a shop, say, they'll often be bonne journée. So that's the only reason I kind of know it really, because I'm not fluent in French. But yeah, I think that's all people need to know, really.
Okay, great. Yeah, please read it. It'd be great.
This morning, the romance of the world washed over me. My heart swelled with positive feelings, not edema. The forklift out the window beeped, "I love you," in Morse code. A curious pigeon molested my bird feeding contraption. I pined longingly for my absent biscuits, which had been eaten last week. Even the unfriendly cat sensed the fragility of the moment and refrained from licking its bits. How sweet it was to breathe the sausage scented air and feel the throb of the washing machine like a second heart, keeping me true. In the garden, a host of petunias dangled and waved their skinny limbs. Oh, darlings, some days are painted in high saturation pigment. Some are faint as a blueprint seen from space. Today, the bees are droning a hosanna to wish me bonjourne. It's ridiculous to be so full of honey for a living. It's ridiculous how ardently the washing machine sings. Dear pigeon, I used to be a heretic from the world. Then romance washed over me. I think I might believe.
I love this poem so much. And I think partly because it is in that maybe more optimistic, I don't know, quote unquote vein, right? I don't know whether maybe it's just my writing or whether I'm just used to poems that lean towards the dark, the ambivalent, the strange, maybe, right? And writing in that more optimistic tone, was that strange to write? Like, do you remember the conception of the poem at all?
Kind of. Yeah, no, I mean, like you say, I think it's less common for a lot of writers, including me, to write things that are optimistic or sort of positive. Like, I say in the second line that my heart swelled with positive feelings, and like I kind of meant it when I was writing the poem, like it wasn't sarcastic or whatever. So yeah, it was kind of strange. I don't know. I guess it was a bit like, just trying to capture this feeling where some days you wake up and you do feel like, oh, it's going to be a nice day or whatever.
Things are possible, right? Like what I really enjoy is that like the title "This Morning" has that comma, right? This morning, the romance of the world. That we run on into the first stanza. I love a title that does that. That really feels. I don't know, when you've got a title for a poem, there's a certain like literariness about it, as opposed to the title and the poem are one and the same, and they're kind of running into each other.
Oh, okay.
And do you know what I mean? In the sense of
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
this poem is called da 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 da, whereas instead there's the tumble of stuff, and it's like the romance of the world washed over me, and it's almost like we're moving with that wash, right? There's a seamlessness to
Yeah.
it that I really appreciate in terms of the form and the sentiment, as well as that the alliteration of the world washed over me, just like such soft sounds in that early bit. And the W in swell, my heart swelled with positive feelings. And I'm like, okay, we're really in a particular territory here. And then you say not edema, and you use, I don't know what you call it, with the O and the E.
The ligature.
Yes. Like that feels to me like you're kind of winking, or
Yeah,
you know
definitely.
what I mean? Like you've picked a word that is of a very specific discourse, but also you've used this like typographic feature that you're like, huh, that's not where I thought we were going. And I don't know for me whether there's a like keeping me, the reader, on my toes slightly, like not getting too caught up in the wash of positive feelings.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess in a way, I mean, I agree with what you said, but I would also just say, like, I kind of threw in not edema as a kind of joke. Like, it's like an aside, but a joke also, because I guess, I do like putting jokes in poems, or like poems, my own poems, I mean, to be like funny and, kind of not so po-faced, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you could easily write a optimistic poem that's quite sincere, right, or very straight
Yeah, yeah.
laced. But I guess that's what I mean in that it kind of made me think, wait, is the speaker being arch here? The first time I read it, I was like, wait, are we actually going to go somewhere else? And there's that sense of the different kinds of register that I'm interested in, and that you do in most of your poems, I think. That even the next line, like the forklift out the window beeped, I love you in Morse code, and like the love is LUV, right? And you, just the letter. That's in a very different world linguistically from edema or my heart swelled.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that, like, just the mixing of kinds of language, I think is something that you seem to be interested a lot in your work.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say so. I mean, I feel like that's kind of one of the things that you could say we're allowed to do, in contemporary poetry or like kind of in the 20th century, maybe. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's more interesting to me at least that things are kind of more of a mix or like a mashup, maybe. But also, I mean, it just feels true to me. Like, I feel like a lot of us, maybe most of us, or me, exist in this world where, like, you learn slang from like social media, or I don't know if you have children, maybe you learn it from your children, but, like slang and then different influences, like, that aren't just all reading other old poems from the past or whatever, or like, old novels or things like that.
Right. No, but I don't think, I'm not sure every contemporary poet does do that, right? Like, I think there are some people like stick with voice so trenchantly that like a deviation
Yeah.
from the sense of or the sound of their voice feels like a friction, whereas I think you lean into the friction of language quite excitingly. I'm also interested in the full stops, right, in these first 4, 5 lines. That we talked from like the end of the line. We talked about the run on from the title into the first line, but then you get washed over me, full stop, not edema, full stop, Morse code, full stop, contraption, full stop. Last week, and how the line and the sentence kind of align for a little while, but then even the unfriendly cat, and then we start to like unspool a bit, right? And you don't get many other end stops there. And I wonder, is there like a building of like those sensory details at the beginning, right? Like that this morning is the real routing gesture, right? Like we're in this particular place and time. Don't get it twisted, right? We're not happy all the time. Like, is this very contained area? And how you thought about those full stops, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in this collection, maybe it was the first time that I used quite a lot of full stops at the ends of lines because before that, I guess I was kind of obsessed in a way with what is called enjambment, where one line runs into the next instead of being what is called end stopped. So it felt really radical to me to like even just write a line that ended with a full stop. And then to put a whole bunch of them together in a row, even. So that was something I was playing with kind of technically, I guess you could say, formally. But, I wouldn't say that I had like a theory behind it, you know what I mean? Or like some underlying principle. It just sort of felt right to me. Or it's interesting to think of each line as just a separate self-contained sentence, like a unit. And then also because that kind of means in a way that when you're editing or revising, you can just move them around in different orders because they're like self-contained or discrete. Do you know what I mean? They're like units that you can move around like kind of modularly.
Yeah, no, because this is something I talked about with Richie Hoffman. Like the poem of his we talked about, he also like does quite a lot of like hard stopped end lines. And I'm like, because I think we're used to in poetry, or like at least in school, talking about the line is the unit, right? In poetry, like the line is the unit that we think about. But to align that unit with the sentence, the grammatical sentence, feels like an interesting coalition, if you like, and has a certain effect on the reading of it as well. The other thing before I get into the next bit that I was thinking about is that you've got this for those people that are listening. The stanzas are like 3 lines, 4 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines. This kind of back and forth. And again, this may not have been conscious in any way, but like it really feels like this like breath to me, like an in out kind of gesture, right? Or at least a kind of soft movement. I don't know. I'm still stuck on the world washed over me, right? Like that kind of that watery kind of feeling at the beginning. It's not standardized. They could easily all be 4 lines each, right? The standards, but instead you've got this kind of back and forth motion, which to me feels like it just feels like movement in some kind of way.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool, actually. I mean, it definitely wasn't intentional when I was doing it, but I like that. Yeah.
How intentional are your stanza breaks when you're writing a poem? Is it feeling based or vibe based, as you said earlier?
Yeah. I mean, it is just, well, also, though, I do feel like one of the things that I don't like about myself as a writer is that I feel like I tend to fall into kind of just standard forms. Like, I write a lot of poems that are in couplets. Obviously, it's free verse, so they're not rhyming couplets, but they're, 2-line stanzas. And then, or sometimes I'll do 3-line stanzas or 4-line stanzas, quatrains. And like I kind of feel like I just do it almost like automatically or just because like it seems the right thing to do. But the whole point of free verse is that you can do anything. You could like I sort of feel like I should be doing more with these stanza forms or the numbers of lines in a stanza and things like that, whereas I kind of just fall back on regular type stanza breaks, I guess. So like with this poem, I don't really remember, but in this collection, a lot of the poems are just all in quatrains, like 4-line stanzas. And so in this one, there's like a couple stanzas that are only 3, but they could easily have been sort of padded out to be 4 lines, to be honest. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't really have any concrete thoughts on that when I was.
No, it's but I'm always just interested in the thing that we see and how it looks and how it feels, right? And like wherever that comes from, it doesn't really matter. I'm just interested in what it does. Because it then continues, I love a curious pigeon molested my bird feeding contraption. Again, like funny, right? Like I pined longingly for my absent biscuits, which would be like, it also made me think of the Elizabeth Bishop poem, like where she loses.
Oh, One Art?
Yeah, one art. You know, this idea of like the small and the big things that one pines for and loses. Like I pine longingly for my absent biscuits, which had been eaten last week. I feel like that's something like she would say in a different register, but I just like the movement from the small to the big, I guess, in this poem.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
Even the unfriendly cat sensed the fragility of the moment and refrained from licking its bits. The I assonance there is so pleasurable of licking its bits. But also the unfriendly cat, right? I'm like, it's a very specific cat. I guess we know who it, like who is this cat that you see in your mornings. But I just love that it's the unfriendly cat, not an unfriendly cat, right? Like the specificity of that cat. It's like we know it as a reader, right?
I mean, obviously, it's my cat, so I could have said even my unfriendly cat, but I sort of feel like I already had like my in the previous 2 lines, like my bird feeding contraption, my absent biscuits, so it just sort of felt a bit too much, maybe.
No, but it does have a different kind of like feel and punch to it. Like the definitive article of the cat, I'm like, yeah, I know that cat. It doesn't matter which cat, right? And then, which I think is a thing that I talk about with my students a lot, right? Like, and refrain from licking its bits. How sweet, not just line break, but then stanza break. It was to breathe the sausage scented air. That how sweet can like point in both directions, right? Both at the cat and at the sausage scented air, and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
the break allows meaning to move in different directions, which is like the first time you really do it, right? As we're talking about those like really hard ends, that it feels like a change maybe in the poem, or at least like a shift in tone or direction.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're totally right. I mean, like that again, that's what I kind of meant when I was saying before that I was always obsessed with line breaks or enjambment. And like you say, it's that way that the meaning points both before and then after it. Or like you can kind of I think of it sometimes as like a hinge, like the way that a door can swing one way or the other. And like you said, obviously, if you just stop at the end of the line, then it's like the refraining from licking its bits is sweet. But obviously, like grammatically, because how sweet is part of a new sentence, it goes on into the next line. So yeah, I always really like that effect in poems.
No, I think, and I like that's the one thing that poems can do that other literary forms can't, right? You can't do that in prose unless you repeat the phrase, and then it's something else entirely. But also to breathe the sausage scented air again, like the unexpected is what, like the poem that leans into the positive and the optimistic. You give us so many sensory details that aren't ones that you might expect, and I think that's where part of the pleasure that the speaker is experiencing then becomes our pleasure too, right? Because it's the detail you don't quite. I wasn't expecting the air to smell like sausages, right? It's going to smell like magnolias or like flowers, or you know what I mean, and feel the throb of the washing machine, like a second heart keeping me true. And that then to me made me think of, again, this is like my sense of like the beat of the poem, right? Like when someone says like keeping me true to like the rhythm almost, or like keeping me true to the image or the line, there's something about like the heartbeat and the throb of the washing machine that I was like, is this poem about writing actually?
Oh, wow. I mean, I can totally see what you mean. Like, I feel like if I were trying to analyze someone else's poem, I might say that. But it definitely wasn't what I was thinking of at all. Like, I've almost never written anything that is meant to be like, about writing or like an ars poetica or whatever like that. So it's interesting that you thought of that. I mean, I guess the obvious thing that people always say in like a poem or whatever is that you're always taught this about when you do Shakespeare in school, how iambic pentameter is supposed to be like a heart. I see what you mean.
Exactly.
That's so funny. I would never have thought of that in a million years, though.
Yeah, like the heartbeat is always like meter, right? Like, or at least the rhythm. But also, like, in terms of like writing about writing, like, so many of your poems are about other cultural texts, right? Like, you use other texts quite a lot, whether it's other literary ones or TV text or films. I feel like you're always skirting around the idea of other art objects, if you like. So even if they're not like ars poeticas, I feel like you're always playing with the boundaries of that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, just that's how I read them. In the garden, a host of petunias dangled and waved their skinny limbs. Oh, darlings, some days are painted. Again, like another little change in like linguistic register. It's not the same from How Sweet, and it's not the same from I Love You in Morse code, and it's not the same as The Romance of the World. Again, this like the poem is like turning around in different kinds of language, which is what I take away. Which is why again is why I like the poem feels to be about language as much as it is about the idea of being happy in the world for for once.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because like "Oh Darlings," the way that it's I guess direct address, and and like OH, or sometimes like in old fashioned times just a single capital O, like that kind of sort of exclamation, I guess. I think this was the first and maybe only time I've done it in a poem. Like I don't normally do that at all. So yeah, it is a very different register or tone kind of at that point. It felt strange, but kind of maybe exciting because I hadn't done it before. And because, like, I guess I would say that kind of traditionally it feels old fashioned, because like it's sort of a stylistic tick that people used in like the 19th century or the 18th century, or whatever, but that, has fallen out of use mostly today. So, and like the type of poems it was used in the past centuries are actually not the old poems that I like either. So I always I would definitely like normally scorn or avoid being like, oh, blah, blah, blah in a poem. So when I decided to do it, I guess it felt like, to me, just in my own head, it felt like I was like breaking a rule, or like it just felt like this transgressive thing, weirdly. I don't know.
No, I mean the only other person I can think of who's doing it and like now is like Richard Scott, right? Like so many O's, and like and it works because
Yeah.
he's interested in those different registers, right? We're like swerving between kinds of language that I really love. And when you then do Oh Darlings, some days are painted with high saturation pigment, some are faint as a blueprint seen from space. Again, like the scale question, right, of the small to the large that you're again doing throughout the poem, but high saturation pigment. Again, it's like I'm seeing the world in like bright colors, but it's also making me think of other art forms of painting, of cinema, of photography, and the blueprint as well. And but then seen from space, and you get this sudden like drift upwards to be like perspective is everything, right? And for a poem that is so light, I imagine it must be hard to kind of weigh those like quite big ideas with the lightness of a poem that has bees saying bon journée right in the next line. So I don't, yeah, what I'm saying is I don't know how you did it, and I'm appreciative of it. Today the bees are droning a hosanna to wish me bon journée, which is such like a lovely line, but it's also funny. And it is, as you the next line, it's ridiculous to be so full of honey for a living. It's ridiculous how ardently the washing machine sings. We can talk about the anaphora in a minute, but like the line droning hosanna to wish me a bon journée is ridiculous, but in a pleasurable way.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, obviously, it's like kind of, I guess, well, I guess it's like personification or anthropomorphizing a bunch of these, or talking about this stuff is totally reminding me of, all this stuff that we were taught in like secondary school or uni. But I guess pathetic fallacy, although maybe that's not for animals, maybe that's just for like the weather. But it's like this idea where like you describe stuff in this way that it like reflects the speaker's mindset or feelings or whatever. So I guess in a way it's basically just kind of like that. I mean, it sounds corny when you say it, I guess. I mean, when I say it.
No, but like pulling in all those different kinds of ways of describing is the exciting part, right? Like if you can't do it in a poem, where can you do it, right? If you can't have bees droning a hosanna, like you can't do it any other way. So smuggle it in if you can. It's ridiculous to be so full of honey for a living. Like this is the thing they do, right? Like this is what they're for. Again, just funny, and how ardently the washing machine sings. Like these things that just do their thing, right? These washing machines, they just do their thing and they're happy about it. It's like, why can't we be that? Why can't we be that as we go out into the world? And I think that is ridiculous. but that is actually more profound than it seems. I feel like you're smuggling in profound questions under the guise of like, this is a fun poem.
Ah, well, that's nice of you to say. It's funny because, well, just thinking about it now, because both of the lines about the washing machine, like the throb and the singing of it, I mean, it's literally like true, at least of every washing machine I've had in like flats in London, those small kind of under the counter kind that you have in the kitchen, because like when they're doing like spin cycle or whatever, they're so loud and like they literally make things in your kitchen vibrate and they have this high pitched whine kind of, and like I can hear like upstairs flats one when it's on and doing that. So like I guess that's just something that to me is so like central to the experience of a washing machine in the UK or whatever, or in London.
But my neighbors upstairs have theirs running right now, and I was like, "Oh no, it's going to really interfere in the sound." But I'm hoping it doesn't get picked up. But again, it is loud. But yeah, it's interesting to think about an inanimate object or these bees. Like, what are we as people in relation to these very random, discrete things? But then you give us another address, right? We've had "Oh Darlings," and now we have "Dear Pigeon." I'm like, we have a different direction of the address. Dear Pigeon, I used to be a heretic from the world. Again, an interesting. And then you've got another dash. There's a couple of dashes in the poem, not many. We could talk about M dashes. I talked to Amy Key about N versus M lines for a good 10 minutes on the episode with her. So I won't get into that now, but we had a really fun chat about what those dashes mean. Then romance washed over me. So you've brought us back to that first line, right? Like really nice, kind of self-contained turn back. I think I might believe. Interesting to end on the I think I might believe. I don't whether sometimes I read that in a positive way, like there's something like quite affirming about it, and then other times I'm like, wait, is this a moment of doubt at the very end? Like we've just gone through all of this positivity and now are we like questioning? I don't know whether how you feel when you read it back.
No, I think you've picked up on exactly what I would hope people would pick up on. Maybe yeah, I think it is meant to be ambiguous. It's not saying I believe or I do believe. Yeah, no. So it's like doubly qualified. It's I might believe, and then it's also I think. So there's like two ways in which the idea has been qualified, you could say. Although I guess I will say on a side note, just I've never told anyone this before, but that what I was actually thinking there, I don't. This is very like the random associations I have when I'm writing. But I was actually thinking it's like this famous kind of tagline from the X Files that
I knew you were going to say that.
really okay, because no, I don't think no one has ever at least told me that they get that. But like the famous line is "I want to believe," so. I think at one point in a draft, I did just write "I want to believe," but then I didn't want everyone to be like, "Oh, this poem is about the X Files and being abducted by an alien or whatever." So yeah, I changed it.
That's really funny. No, I've got a print them. I need to find somewhere to put it on my wall. It's from an artist up near Manchester, and it's like it's a gorgeous like watercolory print of Mulder and Scully standing in front of the poster.
Oh my God, really?
I mean, I love the show, so I'm like into it.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
But
yeah.
again, like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to be like, I think I might believe. I was like X Files in my head, but I was like, I'm not going to say that to Jane Yeh and just sound like a moron. But I'm glad that's interesting. That's interesting.
Oh no, like 1,000%. That's purely where it came from.
But again, that's like so many of your poems are interested in that, like, I don't know, like Bart would call it intertextuality or whatever, right? Like we're made up of the tissue of stuff that we consume.
Yeah, yeah.
And the way that filters into our language, or our languages, if you like, is one of the ways this poem is working and thinking, I guess. Do I have ways to describe what it feels like to maybe be optimistic for once in the morning, or like when a morning actually hits kind of in the right way? Like what ways can I write about that without it either becoming cliche or trite or simplistic or, one directional, maybe? I love this poem. I appreciate reading it with you. I want to ask you about how you write anyway, in more general terms. Do you have like a writing practice? Do you write in one place? Do you write by hand on your phone, on computers? Like do you have talismans?
Yeah, so basically I always write in cafes or sometimes libraries because if I'm at home, I basically can't concentrate at all. Like I'll just be like, "Oh, look, it's dusty over there, so I should probably vacuum," or like you can find a million excuses not to write because like writing is the hardest thing kind of. So I basically it took me years to figure this out, but like I just can't get any writing done at home practically. I mean, sometimes I can do revising at home, like if I have a draft already, but otherwise. So yeah, like I guess I feel like, and so because I'm always in a kind of semi-public place when I'm writing, I actually always wear earplugs, to drown out like other people talking and music and stuff like that. And I think it just puts me into this mindset where I'm like totally focusing on something. And I pretty much always need coffee because it's in the morning. But I'm not at all precious about like rituals or materials or whatever. Like I just write literally with cheap ballpoint pens and on loose sheets of paper, like printer paper that you buy in bulk. Because I guess I just don't really, I don't know, I don't care about like having a notebook or like a special folder or things like that. And also because I think for a long, long time in my life, I couldn't really afford to have like things like that or whatever. It just seemed like a waste of money because I was worried about money. I guess in terms of hand versus computer, because people always want to know about that. I always write by hand initially because I actually developed like repetitive strain injury in my hands a long time ago. So I can't really type on a computer too much. So I write by longhand, like on paper, like I said, in cafes and stuff. And then when I get home, I use like voice recognition software to dictate it into Word. And then I print it out. So then, like, the next day, I'll have like a printout of what I've written so far. And then I'll just continue writing on it by hand and so on and so on. I guess like before that, though, I just always wrote straight on my computer. Like, I really enjoyed it. Anyway, so I do miss being able to do that. But I guess the silver lining is that I don't need to bring my computer everywhere with me to do writing. So it's quite good when traveling or whatever. So I guess probably because I'm too old to be of that generation, I don't write on my phone. I mean, occasionally if I'm out somewhere and I can't sit down with a piece of paper and a pen, I might jot like a phrase down on my phone that I thought of suddenly, but that doesn't really happen too often, I would have to say, to be honest. And I guess like in terms of routine or practice, I do try to write every day. And I know that doesn't work for a lot of people for various reasons. I mean, like creatively, it doesn't work for them. And I know also practically for a lot of people, it seems kind of impossible to have time to write every day. So I know I'm lucky in that like my life and my work schedule pretty much allow me to most days. So I guess for me, like the reason I do like it is because I feel like it takes the pressure off when you sit down to write because you know you're going to do it again the next day, even if it's not for very long each day. So it's like, if the session goes well, that's good. But if it doesn't, you go again the next day. So, to me, it's like I got to the point before I started doing like kind of daily writing as a practice. I got to the point where I would be so blocked, like the times that I would actually try to sit down and write something. So I guess it became this way to like, take away writer's block maybe, or the pressure on yourself when you're writing. And then also I think the way that like, writing a bit one day and then printing it out and then going back to the next day, it's like you feel kind of like you're starting afresh a little bit again each, or like for the piece that you're working on, it's almost like you're starting afresh again, but you have like this part that you've written already. So I don't know, it just helps me keep going, I guess.
I mean, I love hearing about how people write. Excites me so much. Can you feel a difference between moving from like typing the first draft to writing by hand? Can you see a qualitative shift in your work?
I don't know exactly. It's kind of hard for me to remember in a way because it was so long ago that I was forced to sort of stop using a computer in a regular way. But
Because I feel like my brain and my hand aren't working at the same pace. So like I always prefer to type. I always type because as soon as I write by hand, I feel like I'm going so slowly that I then get tripped up over the words I'm then writing.
no, I definitely see what you mean because I was like a really fast typist, so I did enjoy being able to like type quickly and like you said, kind of at the pace that you're thinking. So it definitely was a change to switch to having to write longhand all the time. I guess though, in a way, I kind of grew to like it because it felt like I think they supposedly there are like studies about this as well that like when you write like that students taking notes in longhand or whatever like it almost is like more ingrained in your mind because you're embodying it at the same time or something. So I kind of enjoy that feeling as well. But no, I mean, I definitely loved writing on a computer all the time, which I used to do. So
And when so you write by hand one day, you print off, you edit the next day. How long are you sitting with a poem? how long are you then like, I'm going to write a new one? Sorry, I'm like really in the weeds here, but I'm like fascinated.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm just laughing because it's kind of embarrassing like how long it does usually take me to write a poem. So like even though I'm writing every day, like each day I might sometimes, if I'm pretty stuck, like I'll really only come up with like a sentence, like one new sentence to add on to this poem that I'm working on so far. Like it really can be incredibly slow. Like there's plenty of poems where I was basically writing every day. And when I say every day, I don't mean like the whole day. It's like maybe a couple hours in the morning before I do the rest of my work for the day. So, but like, where I'd be working away every day and it would literally take about a month of, so that's like almost 28 days of doing like this bit of writing every day, like to accumulate like a poem. And my poems are not even that long. So it's kind of painstaking and it's actually not very good practice. Like, it's literally the opposite of what we tell students to do, which is to like come out with a draft pretty fast and then worry about refining it and stuff. So I don't even know how I ended up with this process because, like I say, it's not actually recommended for good reasons. But that is how I've kind of ended up working over the years.
I mean, it seems to be working for you. Your poems are great. So I think you're clearly doing something that works for you, right? I think it's one has to find the way that one writes. There can be models, there can be good practice, but like if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, right? You've got to do the thing that does work in that moment. But no, it's helpful for me to hear because I'm always stuck with writing. So I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna see if I can.
That's
Yeah,
okay. Well, the other annoying thing about it is that unless you do the library all the time, going to cafes gets kind of expensive.
yeah. I don't mind working at home. Like I can get work done at home, but I can just even just like printing it out and just sitting with a pen and just sitting with it for a little while.
I mean, actually, to be honest, even when I did write on computers all the time, for editing or revising, I always liked to print out because, the text just reads differently when you're reading a printout somehow rather than on the computer screen. So, and I always recommend to students as well, like, especially, well, now we're going off topic, but like for essays or like, non-creative writing, like when like for proofreading and copy editing, like it actually is really valuable to print stuff out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it's off. I like this podcast is about writing and how you do it. So I'm. It's exciting whatever we talk about. Do you remember when you first started writing? Do you know were you an early writer or an early reader? Do you remember those details?
Somewhat. Like I definitely was a super early reader because I mean, me and my sister, I guess somehow sort of by osmosis, I guess, learned to read before we went to actual school. So I always loved reading, and I'm sure I did like I probably tried to write like little stories and things, but I guess the thing that I really remember is sort of around the age of 9 in school, we would have like, I think it was one day a week where like for a certain period of time, like it was maybe an hour, it was like writing time. They didn't call it creative writing. I guess it was just called like writing. And so each of us would sit there on our own at our little desks and write whatever you wanted to for that time period. So it could be like, they were like, oh, you can write like about your dog or your family or what you did for summer holidays or whatever. Like it could just be anything, but like you kind of had to do it every week, I guess. And then we would have to keep and of course this was before computers anyway, so it was like sheets of paper and like we each had a special binder that we would put them in, and then all the binders were on this shelf in the classroom, and you could go read, and then there were like other periods during the week that were reading period, where again like we were expected to sit there and read like books or other things, and one of the other things you could read was like what other students had written. And so for some reason I decided to write this like serialized story that was like this ridiculous like fantasy adventure type story. So, I would be writing like a new chapter of it each week or like a new installment of it to put it in my little binder. And then some of the students started reading it, and like they seemed to enjoy it and they would be like looking forward to the next installment. So that was like a little taste of people actually wanting to read something I wrote, which it took many years for to have that feeling again. Many, many, many years, or if at all. But anyway, yeah, I totally forgot about that until you were asking about it.
But like the idea of writing, putting it out into the world, having people want consume it, and then like using that as a spur, like that feels really formative, right? The idea that writing is to be read. It doesn't have to be like world changing.
Yeah, no, it is. crazy when I think back on it. Like, we didn't think about it or question it at all. Like, we just did what we were told to. And like, I guess I was lucky because, it was like a nice group of kids. People weren't like, haha, your piece sucks. I mean, to anyone else, like not just to me. Like it was all just like really nice and like it was fun to read other people's pieces as well. I don't know. It was, yeah, I guess. Well, I feel like I had quite a lot of really good teachers just at like the state school in my hometown, that created like this nice atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah, it's really lovely. Which might be a segue to, because obviously I know you teach creative writing. Are there any creative writing exercises that you might share with like listeners now? Is there anything people might do that you would recommend?
Yeah, I guess I have kind of like two main thoughts, maybe. So one is more general, but it's kind of this whole idea of trying to be open to discovery or kind of surprising yourself when you're writing. Because I think, in a way, there's like sort of nothing more deadening to writing than when you're trying to come up, like deliver a message in your writing or like stick to some kind of theme that you've decided in advance. So, a kind of specific case of that maybe is that, so like one of my favorite, I guess, or most prized writing teacher was this U.S. poet called Lucy Brock-Broido, and she used to tell us like, how you'll be drafting a poem and then you'll maybe be halfway through it and you'll think of like some line or image where you're like, oh, this would be great for the ending. And what she always said was like, just put it in right away, as you're working on the draft. Don't like save it till the end, because inevitably kind of you always end up trying to like sort of contort the poem to fit that ending that you've just thought of. Whereas like if you put it in right away, you have like this, what you think of as like a great, really cool line or image. And then by putting it in there, then it will like be a springboard to what you write next. So that will be something exciting and cool as well, like to continue the poem. And then obviously you'll come up with something in the end for the ending. It's kind of this idea. Sometimes I think of in like baseball terminology in the US, which will mean nothing to British people, obviously, but there's this saying like you go with the hot hand or you play the hot hand. And basically it just means that like if a player's on a roll, like, they're having like a hitting streak or whatever, that you keep putting them in the lineup and having them play every day. And it's kind of like that in writing a poem, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like you go with what's hot as you're writing it. And like, even if that takes you in a totally different direction than what you started out in, or like, you, again, it's just this whole idea of being open to discovering something new that you didn't intend beforehand.
Are there any books or essays like on writing as practice that you might recommend also?
Yeah, so a recent one that I think is really good because it's a collection of essays. So, you get all these different voices and their different ideas. It's called The Craft, A Guide to Making Poetry Happen in the 21st Century. It's edited by Rishi Dastidar, published by Nine Arches. So it's all like UK based poets. And again, like a really diverse selection, people with different styles and ideas. And again, it's just like a really solid kind of craft, practical guide to poetry, I think. Like there's like an essay on how to pick a good title or like what makes a title good, and other essays about like endings or imagery or things like that. So I find it's very accessible, like the way that it's written. It's not theoretical or academic or something like that. It's just very based on writers' own experiences and wisdom. So it's a great book, I think. And then I guess I would also mention sort of two old books that are kind of classics in the US at least. One is called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And it's these short essays that she wrote about kind of, and they're not actually specific to poetry. It's like about being a creative writer in general. And then also, this one is about poetry. It's called The Triggering Town, which is a collection of essays by Richard Hugo. And again, it has a lot about kind of craft and sort of philosophy in a way, but really his advice really rings true to me. So
Amazing. The chapter in Bird for Bird, what's called shitty first drafts. I've attached it to every module that I teach. Like it's just on the first page of every module I teach. When I just read it, it will open up space to just be like, it's fine. The first thing you write isn't always good. Don't worry about it.
yeah. I mean, again, it even applies to writing essays or like non-creative writing because it's just true. Like, and the way that it's like the way like I was saying earlier, how like the best practice is that you just like pump out a draft and worry about revising it later. But like I can say that to someone and it's just, I'm just saying it. But like the way she writes about it in this quite short essay makes you really understand and feel it. And like can kind of convince you to be able to do that, which is what I think is so brilliant.
Yeah, and it's funny too, which I appreciate. So
yeah. No, her style is great.
okay, so the final question is, beyond those kind of like craft books, like are there any things you want to recommend to listeners, like new things, old things, things that are not out yet that you want to recommend?
Yeah, so I just have three poetry books fairly recent that I would recommend and that I feel like in a way don't get enough love maybe. They're all by US poets. So one is by Morgan Parker. It's called Magical Negro. It's actually published as well in the UK, so it's quite easy to get hold of. And then another is by Hala Alian. And it's called The 29th Year. It was her debut collection. I think it's really amazing. And then Terrence Hayes, he's quite well known as a poet, but actually, like the last collection he wrote before he sort of became really famous was called Lighthead. And for me, that's like actually my favorite collection of his. So even if people know his later poems, like the American Sonnets and stuff, I would recommend going back to this previous collection because there's some really amazing poems in it.
Those are amazing. Yeah, we love the Morgan Parker book.
Yeah, I think she's kind of amazing. And I feel like she did get a lot of press because, like, you know, that and her previous book were, at least in the US, like kind of quite successful by poetry standards. But then she hasn't written a poetry collection since Magical Negro. So, I mean, I think she's focusing on other things. Like she has a creative nonfiction book out and stuff, but I miss her poems.
Same. Well, thank you so much for those recommendations. We will link them all in the notes so people can find them. And yeah, just again, thank you so much for spending your time with me today, Jane. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on the podcast. It was really fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe if you haven't already, leave a review and share with people you know. You can also follow the show and me on Instagram at Books Up Close and on YouTube. And if you can, please do fill out the feedback form linked in the show notes. It's really helpful to us. You can get show transcripts and more information by subscribing to the Substack. This show is made possible by an Impact Accelerator Award from the University of Hertfordshire and the Arts and Humanities Research Council.